Looks like we are not responding, and it looks like we are live. Welcome to the show. All right. This week on Frame of Mind, I tell you why we skipped last week's show, why the tensions are high at the southern U.S. border, Gavin McInnes leaves the Proud Boys, also some real solutions in distant lands, and what you need to know about the economy. It may not be the rainbows and pots of gold that Trump promised you. Prepare yourself accordingly.
You're listening to the Unframe of Mind show, the place to have the most mind-stretching, unprotected, intellectual intercourse of your life. Your host, Daniel Wagner, battles the forces of evil by lobbing fiery balls of truth, reason, and evidence over safe room walls.
All right, y'all. Welcome to the Unframe of Mind show, where we have uncomfortable conversations without a condom. And today we'll be lobbing fiery balls of truth, reason, and evidence over safe room walls. I'm your host, Daniel Wagner, and today my co-host is missing. He done gone AWOL because, work. You need to work. I don't understand. I mean, clearly this show is way more important than going to work. I mean, that's just a given, I believe. At any rate. So I've got a bunch of really great topics to cover tonight. Quite a bit of things to go into. It's been 2 weeks since I've been doing this show, and we actually skipped last week's show because of the holiday, because of Thanksgiving. And it just, when you have a family, that just comes first. And so that's kind of the direction I went. We went ahead and said, listen, it's going to be too complicated to try to sit down and do a show. Let's just go hang out with the family. I'm sure people understand that we have priorities, we have responsibilities. So I like to live by the principles that I preach. So that's kind of the direction we went. And we went and hung out with the family and took Wednesday night. Miss Producer Haley here. We all hung out over at our Uncle Devin's house. Had a good time, right? All right. Well, she's scared of the mic, so. At any rate, so. Like I said, tonight I'm going to be running solo, so I'm going to be counting on you guys in the comment section to give me hell, ask me questions, and correct me when I'm wrong, of course, which is probably going to be the entire show. So let's continue. So I wanted to bring up some great news I thought was pretty cool. We actually just recently got added to libertarianpodcasts.com. I had submitted a proposal a long time ago. And I just got a tweet from them saying that they included us in the show. I thought that was pretty damn cool. Yeah, so there's my little thingy right there. Yeah, Unframe of Mind right there on libertarianpodcast.com. I am up before the Glenn Beck program, just so you know. At any rate, so yeah, I think I hope things like that'll help bring in more listeners to the podcast. Which, if you don't know, if you've only watched me on YouTube, I do have a podcast as well. That I basically take the live shows and I turn them into podcast form. Every once in a blue moon, I have a guest on that does not want to be on videos and they want to be anonymous, so I may have them featured on the podcast only. If you want to know if you've missed anything, just head over to unframeofmind.com and you can check out all the little my podcast feed and whatnot, and everything will be there. So my friend Revisionist piping in the comment section. I'm glad you could come out and join me this week, man. I apologize again for not being there last week. I'm sure you understand family comes first, so yeah, there's that. But I'm glad you were able to hang out with me tonight, and hopefully we'll have a good show for you. That's, one can only hope. So let's get into the topics today, and I'm going to take a brief moment to talk about, we've been kind of covering the whole Proud Boys debacle and everything else, and I found it interesting that recently I have discovered that I am now considered a terrorist. I'm a terrorist now because I'm part of the Proud Boys, and the FBI has declared the Proud Boys as a terrorist organization. That is so cool. You're doing the right thing when the U.S. government considers you a terrorist. So I know I'm on the right track. But basically, I wanted to talk about Gavin leaving the Proud Boys because of all the flack he's been getting. And there was a brief clip I wanted to play by Joe Rogan where he kind of goes over it and gives his thoughts on it. So I'll just play a couple minutes of that, and then we'll move from there and see what we got. So.
Gavin McInnes, I think, is fucking hilarious.
Gavin's in the crossfire right now. The eye of Sauron is upon him. He's just
Really?
he said too much stupid shit about like inciting violence, and now that there's some article saying that the FBI considers him that the Proud Boys are a hate group. But then Cumia sent me something that he sent him, and I'll send it to you. He's saying it's bullshit.
The first time I heard about the Proud Boys, I was doing Gavin's show in New York, and he was with Dante Nero, which is a black comic in New York, and he was like, "Hey, me and him are in the Proud Boys," and I was like, "What the fuck's the Proud Boys?"
Hold
and
on,
he was like,
let's explain what it actually is. It was a joke.
At first, it was like, we don't jerk off so that we'll want to fuck our wives. And then, like 4 months later, I was like, "Oh fuck!"
Gavin McInnes quit the Proud Boys today. Well,
Oh, is it today? I thought he had quit that years ago, though.
Yeah, so as of today, that was November 21st, he disassociates himself from the Proud Boys in all capacities. Forever, I quit. I was told to use the term stepping down, but I refused because that makes no sense. I was never the leader, only the founder, which is true. Although the media will likely say Gavin McInnes steps down as leader of extremist hate group Proud Boys or, white supremacist group. They'll say that because that's how they roll. I do this reluctantly because I see it as the greatest fraternal organization in the world, but rumors and lies and bad journalism has made its way to the court system and the NYC-9. The Proud Boys arrested after I did a talk here in New York, and they're facing serious charges. I'm told by my legal team and law enforcement that this gesture could help alleviate their sentencing. So basically, he's leaving the Proud Boys in order to help the Proud Boys. I guess that's the essential message we're supposed to get from that. So let's continue.
Just got posted, I think.
Maybe. Jamie, I'm sending you an article, too, where he's realizing how problematic it is to be connected with these people. And that, look, it's one of those fucking things. You want to have a group, you can't control everyone in the group. So anybody in the group that does something horrible, I just sent you something. Pull this up. This is Gavin's response to all this, because so many people got mad at me that I had Gavin on in the first place. But first of all, I had Gavin on because he used to be one of the founders of Vice. Yeah. Also, because I had Gavin on before that, and he was fun to hang out with. Then when I had him on,
did he become weird now?
When I had him on the last time, one of the things that he was talking about was the Proud Boys. I didn't even know what the fuck that was. I think maybe I had heard of it, but I thought it was a joke. Turned out it used to be a joke. It started off as a joke on Compound Media. And Anthony will get into it better. He knows the history of it. But they were making fun of something. And they decided to make a fake mock group called the Proud Boys. Now, the problem with this is when you have a group that's supposed to be fighting Antifa, and I actually tried to express this to him when he was on the show, because he was talking about kicking people's ass. We're going to punch them in the face. I'm telling him to punch people in the face. I'm like, okay. That's not how reality works. Like, I don't know if you've ever been punched in the face or if you've been around people that like to punch people in the face, but you don't just punch someone in the face. What happens is you punch them in the face, they come back with a bat, somebody gets a knife, people get guns. It always escalates. It's going to keep...
All right, now that's actually a common fallacy called the slippery slope argument, where just because somebody does something, it's inevitably going to result in World War III, and that's just not the case. But I get his point that people do tend to escalate, but I think he kind of took it a little bit over the top on that. But let's continue.
Keep going. You don't just get away with punching people in the face. And yeah, it's not good that these Antifa people bring bike locks and smack people in the heads with them, and that's kind of the point in that in the first place. Those people don't understand what happens when you start the chain of violence. Yeah. When you start that domino chain, they don't understand what happens. They think that they're living in some fucking book that they love about some revolutionary liberal character that, reaches out and smashes all these oppressors of social justice.
Again, that's absolutely not true. I've been a member of the Proud Boys for quite some time, albeit peripherally. But every meeting that I've gone to, we're just a bunch of guys sitting around hanging out, supporting each other, talking politics, and supporting Western culture. That's pretty much the gist of it. And I've even heard rumors at times where, I've heard people say, well, the Proud Boys, in order to get in the Proud Boys, you have to actually beat up a liberal to get in. And I'm like, oh my God. That was Kyle Kalinske. I love that guy. Oh my God, he's such an idiot. But at any rate, the way to get in the Proud Boys is you get vetted in. You say, hey, I want to be in the Proud Boys, and now you're in the Proud Boys. But to get to level 2, you got to go through a ritual, a hazing ritual, if you will. And basically, what it is, you stand around, or a bunch of level 2 Proud Boys stand around and punch you while you list off 5 breakfast cereals. That's it. It's silly. It's a bunch of dudes doing dude shit. That's pretty much all it is. But let's continue.
That's not reality. In reality, you just hit a guy with a lock who's talking to you. You assaulted him with a deadly weapon, and the next thing you know, they're going to kill you, or they're going to beat you, or they're going to punch you. So when a guy like Gavin says something like, you should punch them in the face, I understand why he said that, because they were inciting violence. These Antifa people would hit people with things. They're wearing masks. Some of them were doing it nonviolently. Some of them just wanted what they thought was the right things to happen. But like all groups, you get a fucking big group. You can't control everybody in the group. Yeah. And that happened with the Proud Boys too, I think. I think he decided to have this thing that was going to, mockingly oppose Antifa. Then it became real, and then it became violence. And this is just one of the problems that people have when there's a fucking group of people opposed to another group of people. And
all right, so that's enough on that subject. At any rate, that's just I wanted to kind of show that differing view. I mean, there's all sorts of different ideas going on about what actually happened, who the Proud Boys are. Of course, there's all sorts of so-called journalists trying to smear the name because they're scared of them, basically. All right, so Trent asks, are these solutions the final kind? I'm not sure what that means. Generally, force requires equal or greater force to counteract it. That might be true. It might be true, yeah, if the whole goal is just to counteract. And like you said in the thing, I mean, people do tend to escalate. That is true. You had the Hetfields and McCoys having a freaking multi-generational feud with each other forever. It's like, yeah, people are stupid. They fight over dumb shit. And I do get Rogan's point about, when you have these groups of people, you can't control everybody, and then what ends up happening is, all it takes is just a couple dudes or a couple people within that group to do something stupid, and now all of a sudden the entire group is painted as that is the example for the entire group. So I mean, I even think probably in Antifa, most of those guys just really want some kind of change. They want something good to happen. They want to peacefully protest. But you got a few assholes that go out there, they put on their masks, and they take it as an example or as an excuse to go out and commit violence anonymously. And it ends up ruining it for everybody. And now Antifa has this like huge black mark on their record. At any rate, so I'm going to move on to the next subject, and you're going to have to put up with some terrible transitions because I'm not smooth at this at all. So we'll just call attention to it, and you can make fun of me accordingly. Anyway, so if you're watching, I appreciate you watching. If you would do me a favor, please like the video, share it with your friends, hit the subscribe button if necessary. If you really, really want to, I really, really wouldn't mind. At any rate, so we're having a little trouble at the U.S. border as of late. The caravan that Anthony and I have been talking about for the last few weeks has finally reached the border. Wait for just a minute. And anyway, they finally reached the border, and you're starting to see the tensions start to rise, and you're starting to see the positioning of everybody involved, and you're starting to see people taking pictures of the exact thing that they want to, the exact narrative that they want to portray. So the biggest image, let me bring up this one here. The biggest one is this lady, a picture of a lady and her children running away from tear gas. This is interesting because it kind of encapsulates the entire argument the left has been trying to make in this whole thing. And it's that Donald Trump is an evil racist monster who hates brown people. Like, that's pretty much it. We should have open borders, and because Donald Trump is a racist and he hates brown people, this is what happens. So we take this picture and we post it everywhere. The hearts of women everywhere bleed for these young ladies, and then chaos ensues. So here's maybe, okay, let's say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and the mainstream narrative gives you about 20 of them. Let me give you the other 980 words of this, okay? So basically what you see in this picture is what happens when you have a type of scenario where the welfare state is calling for people to come. People want to come because there is benefits. There is a chance at a better life for them. I don't blame them for that. So here we got an image where people are trying to come into the country. They feel like they have a right to it because our mainstream media has constantly, been passing out this stupid ass narrative that, we owe everybody everything. We can give free things to everybody. Like, there's infinite resources here. Come on in. And then you end up with a scenario like this. Now, I know it's been said multiple times that Trump has warned them, hey, you come to our borders, you're probably going to run into some trouble. They've even added the razor wire fencing that you see here in the picture up in the top left corner. Okay, they've actually added that. And look, it's doing a pretty damn good job keeping people out. Okay, nobody wants to go climb some razor wire. It works really well for prisons to keep people in. And lo and behold, it works pretty damn well for keeping people out. So you've got most of the people gathered up at the front gates. You got quite a few of them over here trying to get through the gate. Now, I don't know what happened in the exact moment before this tear gas was thrown out, but I would venture to say that it was probably something happened that they felt like they had to retaliate. They had to get these people, hey, y'all need to back off. This is a nonviolent option. Nobody's going to get hurt. Uncomfortable for a little while? Yeah, but hurt? Not going to happen. So what I also see, here's even more of the story. I'm pretty sure I'm over 1,000 words by now, right? You think so? So what I'm also seeing is a terrible fucking mother. Like, basically, you're coming into a war zone. Like, right here, you're coming into a fucking war zone. And you're going to bring your children. Like, that is some terrible... I mean, I heard this great argument, and I totally agree with it. Is like, here in the United States, if you let your kid go out and ride a bike in public streets without a bike helmet, you can get in trouble for that. Like, they'll put your ass in jail for that. But it's perfectly okay for these women to be dragging their kids in their diapers, no pants on. Like, one kid's not even got no damn shoes on. Like, and you're going to try to tell me that these people just walked 2,000 miles because they needed a better life or because they're running from their government and they're here. And now they're just poor innocent victims, completely void of any agency. They have no responsibility in this. Like, I'm sorry. You're full of shit if that's the story you're going to try to tell me. And the scenario can't be that terrible in this picture when the majority of the people are standing around taking pictures. Okay, everybody's kind of looking. A few people are taking pictures. I even see a few people smiling. You know, young men, young women, just hanging out pretty much, kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. So I'm sorry. If the media is going to try to put this picture down your throat, don't be fooled by it. It's for the sole purpose of tugging at your heartstrings and making you feel bad for this mother and her two children. And all the articles that are written about it, all the headlines that have been written about it are going to be tailored perfectly for, you know, the idea that Trump is a monster. Look at these poor innocent victims. Okay. So there's also the huge idea that Trump is a monster for using tear gas at the border. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but guess what? On tab 4, I'm sorry, it'll be tab 5. My bad. I got it backwards. So Obama's use of tear gas at the border. He used tear gas at least 80 times at the border. Okay, like this is something that happened at a pretty regular rate under the Obama administration. This is a shout out to Breitbart. Under the Obama administration, U.S. Customs and Border Protection law enforcement officials, including Border Patrol agents, utilized tear gas against migrants at or near the border at least 80 times between 2012 and early 2017. So, yeah, there's that. I went ahead and there was another link that came up when I was doing research on that, and it's the fact check for that particular thing. And turns out Snopes says it's mostly true. I'm not sure what mostly true means. Either it kind of is or it isn't. But anyway, I was just surprised that they actually said it was true, because usually Snopes is pretty well known for kind of lying at this point and trying to really, really sway toward the left's narrative. Anyway, what they said is what's true is the Customs and Border Protection agents used tear gas 1.3 times per month on average between 2012 and 2016, the final 5 years of Barack Obama's tenure as president. What's false is figures are not available for the first few years of Obama's tenure as president from 2009-2011. So basically, Snopes had to admit, yeah, okay, it's true. But the problem is most people aren't going to sit there and take the time to search for this shit and find out, oh, guess what? Obama's like at least 80 times worse than Trump in this case. At least 80 times. So let me catch up on the comments here. I thank you guys for hopping in here and chatting with me. It's really awesome that you guys took the time to come hang out with me tonight. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And I also really appreciate it if you let your friends know about the show. Let them know about it, because that's the only way we're going to grow. So Revision says the photo might be staged. Yeah, that actually did cross my mind. I have heard speculation about it. There's no proof or evidence for that, but it is very likely in this case because I mean, it's not uncommon. I mean, there's been multiple instances where the media has staged photos, for example, making the crowds in certain areas look more than they actually are by bunching them all together and taking a real tight shot. Or, for example, when they take pictures of Trump rallies, we're talking about thousands and thousands of people, and they take these pictures early on before the event actually takes place to make it look like, oh, nobody's actually here. But in reality, they're just lying straight up. All right, so Revisionist says, one of the few responsibilities of government is to protect the border. This is true. This is true. And I seriously have a sneaking suspicion that if Trump does back down, which I seriously doubt he's going to, if he does back down, that's going to pose an even bigger problem than if he was to stand here and fire tear gas on him, albeit, lackadaisically at best. But it's an interesting situation. It's interesting to see how this thing has kind of progressed over time and where it's going to go. I'd be really interested to see here in the next couple weeks kind of what that ends up looking like. It could be that it just dissipates. They go home, media stops talking about it because that plan didn't work, or somebody could do something stupid and start, I don't know, throwing rocks, firing guns. Who knows what they could do? I'm hearing they're already throwing rocks. So let me move on into something where I'm a little more critical on Trump in this case. I know I spend a lot of time sounding like I'm sucking his dick, but that's not the case. I'm totally an anti-statist. So there's something to be said about everything that Trump does I disagree with, just in the fact that he is a politician, and I disagree with that. But that's not really the point of this next section. What I want to talk about is the economy. I know there's been a lot of talk about our economy is looking so great. People are doing so well. Unemployment's at an all-time low. Things are just going wonderful. It's all peaches and rainbows. It's butterflies. It's unicorns. It's all these beautiful things, and it's awesome, and it's amazing, and it's the best it's ever been, and it's all these other positive adjectives. And I've actually been paying a lot closer attention to this than probably most people have, and there's actually a lot of indicators going on right now in the market that are they're incredibly similar to the same indicators that there were before the 2008 recession. And what we're actually seeing is kind of a false hope rise in the market right now. You're seeing a lot of businesses are starting to hire, because they feel this hope that things are going to be better. And I don't foresee that being sustainable at this point. There's too many things that are going wrong right now. Too many things that are heading in the complete wrong direction for that to be true. Now let me start off with a few numbers by Ronnie Moaz. I believe that's his name. My bad. He's a guy in the crypto space that I like to listen to on Tab 7. He put out a tweet, and it's a lot of, it's kind of like a condensed down version of all the things that I've been hearing about. So just click on that one right there. Yep. Yeah. So he says hashtag MAGA LOL. U.S. steel is down 50%. General Motors laying off 14,700 workers. IBM is down 33%. General Electric down 75%. Sears has gone bankrupt. Worst month in the stock market in 10 years. Half of the S&P 500 names are 25% to 50% off of their highs as Trump plays his supporters like a violin. Yeah, there's a lot in that, and those numbers are accurate. I've double checked them. If I'm wrong, please let me know, but I'm pretty certain that those numbers are accurate. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this particular space. And speaking of the General Motors thing, I did hear that Trump is trying to penalize them and punish them, trying to threaten to take away their government funding, which in the first place, there was no reason to give them funding in the first place. That's kind of how we got in this situation anyway. Back in 2008, especially, you had the situation where a bunch of banks and all the automakers and all these big businesses were too big to fail. At least that's the whole story or the narrative that we were given. These companies are too big to fail, and if they fail, we're all screwed. Well, guess what? That probably would have been true, and that probably would have been okay. Except the problem is it would have been just a little bit of discomfort then versus 10 years later of continuing to pump up this fake bubble. And now we're in a situation where the pain is still going to come. It's just going to be a lot worse. You know, it's almost like having a toothache and just continuously shooting Novocaine in there and hoping it's going to go away, and it doesn't go away. It just gets worse. So Revisionist says Trump supporters think the economy is booming. Yes, that's true. It's all this false hope, this false like hurrah rah rah like it's really breaking my heart because right now is a time that people should be preparing for other things to come. Okay, there's time. Like right now, you have time. Like Trump did buy us some time. If we would have had Hillary in office, we would be heading very, very quickly toward this exact same thing. We're still heading there, just much more slowly. At any rate, let me play a small clip by Peter Schiff from Euro Pacific Capital. I listen to him all the time. I disagree with him on his stances on crypto. But I really, really like his positioning on the overall market. And we're going to do the whole thing. It's fine. Okay. Yeah. So at any rate, he's got the right idea. And I agree with everything he says about as far as the value of the dollar and the fiat currency that we're all currently experiencing and the problems with that and the issues that are going to come out of that. Anyway, I'll let him speak about that. I'm going to play this 5-minute clip here and just let it play all the way through. I may actually stop it, but I'll probably interrupt. I usually do. At any rate, go ahead and play it.
We are pleased to once again be joined by the CEO of Euro Pacific Capital, Peter Schiff. Peter, thank you so much for being with us again. You've been calling for a correction for a long time. More than that, actually, more than a correction. And this is certainly a correction. The Dow down sharply, the S&P also, and NASDAQ down. Again, yesterday was no bargain either. Is this it, Peter?
Well, I've been calling for a bear market, and I think this is a bear market. And if we get a rally, that will be the correction because the primary trend is now down. This is early in this bear market. It's very young, and unfortunately, it's going to be very long-lived. I think this is going to be similar, if not worse, than the bear market that went from 1966 to 1982. It took 16 years for the Dow to make a new high. And during that time period, inflation took about 70% away from the Dow's value. This time, I think it's going to be worse.
And why do you think that? I mean, at the initial point right here, Peter, is it that some traders just don't want to face the music, even if it's downer tunes?
They don't even understand the music or what's playing. What they don't get is that we are about to finish the financial crisis and Great Recession that started 10 years ago in 2008, because all the Fed succeeded in doing was interrupting that process, which was the market's cure for the underlying economic disease, which is now much worse. 10 years of additional debt, borrowing and spending simply allowed us to reflate an even bigger bubble than the one that popped before. And so as a result, we're in much worse economic condition than we were on the eve of the last crisis. And so now the finishing process is going to be far more severe. So the back half of the Great Recession is going to be much greater than the first half. And the rest of the financial crisis is going to be much worse than the beginning. And people just don't get that yet. And it's going to take a long time for them to figure it out. I mean, maybe not that long, maybe months, we'll see. But in the meantime, everybody thinks this is a healthy correction. There is nothing healthy about what's going on. This is a bubble deflating. This is exactly how it started in 2008, only this is a bigger bubble, and it's going to produce a bigger crisis.
You know, you've said this before, and I want to, if you'll pardon me, I want to sort of tease it out a little bit more. So, you know, part of the problem back leading up to 2008 was the unregulated markets, the mortgage-backed securities, and those over-the-counter things that, you know, weren't regulated, and rampant speculation. But why do you say that this is a bigger problem than then, Peter? I'm sorry to have you do a little remedial stuff for us, but I'm very curious.
Well, that's a common misconception that was all these underregulated or non-regulated markets. It was the regulated products, you know, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You know,
that's true.
These were the entities, and you know what they were doing was subprime. But remember, the fuel for that bubble.
and that was actually kind of the beginning, one of the beginnings of this whole. politically correct kind of bullshit, this equality thing where, the mortgage lenders weren't giving out loans to underprivileged and black families. It was all about trying to balance out the scales and make it more fair. It's like, these lending practices must be racist. So the Federal Reserve was messing with interest rates. They were trying to force people to force the mortgage lenders to give loans to people that were clearly underqualified or unqualified to have one, and it was just going to spell certain disaster at some point.
Bubble was not the mortgage lenders. It was the Federal Reserve, which kept interest rates artificially low. They kept interest rates at 1%, which at that time was the lowest they'd ever been. They left them there for an entire year. And then it took 2 to 3 years to normalize back up to 5%. But we took on a lot of debt when interest rates are artificially low. A lot of it was mortgage debt, and the bubble popped. But this time, the Federal Reserve injected far more monetary heroin into the economy. They kept interest rates at 0 for 6 years. They've been raising them for 3 years, and they're just now back at 2%. So you have 9 years so far of extremely artificial low interest rates, which have caused a much bigger credit bubble than the one that popped in 2008. We have a bubble in real estate. We have a bubble not only in residential but commercial. We have a bubble in stocks. We have a bubble in bonds. We have bubbles everywhere, and they all popped. And the air is coming out, and the economy during these 9 years got way more screwed up than it did during the years that Greenspan inflated the housing bubble. The Bernanke, Yellen, and now Powell bubble is far bigger. So the economy is in much more trouble. And so therefore the process of unwinding all these malinvestments, right, liquidating all the mistakes, and a lot of money is going to be lost, far more money than was lost in the collapse of '08. And the difference is the Fed is not going to be able to bail anybody out. There is no bigger bubble that the Fed can blow. This is it. They're done blowing bubbles. We now finally have to deal with the consequences. And because we kicked the can down the road for so many years, the consequences are much more severe than they would have been had we bit the bullet and dealt honestly with them earlier.
All right, so yeah, that's kind of the whole gist of it. I was glad I could find that video, because usually he tends to be a little more long-winded, and he goes in a lot of detail about what he's talking about. But that one was nice and neat, tight. I like that one, so that's why I chose that one to play for you guys, just so you can get a general gist of kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the whole economic collapse that is bound to happen pretty soon, because mathematically, what cannot continue will not continue. So let's see. Let's go back to the comment section here for a moment. Logical Thoughts says the Federal Reserve, what a joke. A third-party system in control of our system. Has nothing to do with the government at all. Yeah, that's true. They kind of work hand in hand with each other. That was all a damn lie to begin with, to make you think, oh, it says federal, so it must have something to do with the government. And it's a reserve, so they must have a reserve of money. And neither one of them was actually true. Revisionist says... True, a group of private banks that loans a country its money supply at interest. I'm not quite sure what that means. At any rate, maybe we can spell that one out a little more clearly for the next go around. At any rate, yeah, so not only are we dealing with that right now on the one end, but on the opposite end, on the actual value of our currency, we're dealing with a big issue there too. Currently, the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency of the world. A lot of other countries, in order to trade with each other, have to convert their currency to U.S. dollar before converting it to the other currency. And right now, it's been something that's been in the works for years. China and Russia are really seriously working right now on dropping the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency and just working toward dealing with each other. So it's been a work in the progress for a while, and right now I think what they're trying to do is get it set up where they don't get as much flack as far as any kind of retaliation from the U.S. government. So go back up for a second so I can read the title there. But China and Russia look to ditch dollar with new payment system in move to avoid sanctions. The gist of this one here, a couple bullet points, is the cross-border pact in development for direct trade payments in the yuan and the ruble. Impetus for move is threat of more economic sanctions by the U.S. So, yeah, they're sitting there going, well, we're doing this, okay? It's just a matter of how do we go about doing this. This has been in talks for quite a while. This article's from scmp.com, the South China Morning Post. Has almost 1,000 shares, so at least a few people are, interested in the know. Anyway, China and Russia are drafting a pact to boost the use of their national currency in bilateral and international trade, underscoring their intent to cut their reliance on the U.S. dollar. Right now, we're kind of okay because they are still reliant on that dollar. But these are a couple superpowers that are fixing to drop us like a bad habit. The development of a new international financial payment system aims to address rising concerns over additional U.S. sanctions and trade tariffs. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, sorry, don't kill me. Anyway, during his visit to China earlier this month, said the two nations were discussing the launch of a new cross-border system for direct payment of trade invoice in the yuan the ruble. I just said that. I feel like I just said that. Why do I keep repeating shit? Anyway, that's kind of the gist of it. I'm sure if you have any financial knowledge whatsoever, you can clearly understand the issue that's going to pose to our U.S. dollar. Basically, the bottom's going to drop out. Our shit will be worth next to nothing, and we'll see a hyperinflation in the middle of a recession. That's wow. I would not want to have either one happen, but to have them both happen at the same time, that's some scary shit. So, question is, what can you do to prepare? And that's the thing that always drives me nuts when I listen to these talk radio shows. They talk about all the problems, but they never talk about the solutions. So, if you're trying to find the video to share, I have posted all of the links in the description for everything that I'm talking about tonight, if you want to check it out. So, let's see. Ryan, welcome to the chat. Says they should invest in crypto. Something tells me I can't sense sarcasm over the internet, but I feel like that was meant as a sarcastic comment. However, that is one possible solution. It's a risky investment, of course, as anything is, but I'm not a financial advisor, so take this with a grain of salt. But a couple of things that I'm doing personally to try to prepare is I'm obviously, first of all, trying to make sure that my debts are taken care of. I don't want to have a bunch of credit card debt ahead of time to make all that stuff's going to make it just even 10 times more difficult for me when things do collapse. Okay. Second thing is, right now, as much as I hate to say it, I've got a job that is relatively stable. It's an international company, so there's a good chance that my job will still be around long after other ones aren't. I want to get out of there, but if I can't, I'm still protected for now, so that's okay. A couple other things I'm working on doing is making sure that I put a chunk of my investments into assets that are not tied to the U.S. dollar. Okay. Right now, that means I'm putting some into crypto. I'm investing money in there a little bit here, a little bit there. Not so much that if I lose it, I'm going to be totally destroyed. I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing that at all. But I'm also investing a little bit in the gold market as well. There's also silver, other precious metals you can invest in that will retain their value in the event of an economic collapse. There's probably one of the most important things from a financial perspective is to build community. I know it doesn't sound like a financial tip, but it really is. I mean, you think about it. If shit goes downhill, who are you gonna count on the most? It's gonna be your neighbors, your friends, your family. It's going to be, you need to build up those relationships with your friends and family. You need to build up those relationships with your community. You need to get out there and get to know the people, get to know what they can do. What are their skills? What can they bring to the table in case something goes bad? I already know my neighbor across the street. We get along great. We're like family and we help each other out. We help each other out now. I mean, if things go bad, we're going to need to rely on each other much, much better. Revisionist says the paper investing or physical metal ownership. Yeah. I'm talking about physical metal ownership. Paper investing, they can still fuck with that. Gold stocks, the gold stocks are doing okay from what I understand, but I wouldn't trust it. I mean, they're still using that fractional reserve banking method in that regard. So I don't know that I would trust that when shit goes downhill and you need to make sure that you've got your value in your hand if possible. Now, there are some companies, I don't remember off the top of my head which one, but you can look them up. There's some companies that will hold it for you. They actually hold the physical metal for you, and when you're ready to get it, they do have it. They don't sit there and do the fractional reserve thing where they loan out 10 times what they've actually got on reserve. Logical Thoughts mentions the barter system will come back. I think that's kind of a common misconception, to be honest. I don't think we've ever had a true barter system. There's always been this kind of secondary layer of trade that's gone on, but for the most part, we've always used some form of money, some form of item to represent value, because it's just way too cumbersome to try to just go on a strictly barter only system. There's just no freaking way. You need something that you can use to represent value. And that's all the money is. It's just something that represents value. So just a few things that you can do to try to prepare and get yourself ready. You know, I'm not saying we're going to go by way of Greece, but you know, that's also a possibility. I'm not saying go, you know, stock up on 14 years of food back in your cellar, but you know, it wouldn't hurt. I'm just saying, just take some steps and kind of be ready for some shit to happen. That's all I'm trying to say. All right. So all right, silver has not surpassed its 1980 USD high. It's the only asset that has not. I'm not sure how to read that. I'm not really sure what that means. If that's a good thing or a bad thing. I haven't really looked into silver just yet. So if that is a good investment, if it's, I've heard of a few friends of mine that do buy a lot of silver, and they say it's actually more valuable than gold to them. So I mean, that's absolutely okay if that's their strategy, as long as it's not tied to the US dollar. I mean, by all means, go for it, dude. Ryan says invest in alcohol. Yeah, well, that's only if you can avoid actually drinking it. You know, I don't think we're going to go quite down that far, but I'm just saying there is some things you can do to just make sure you are prepared and at least sitting somewhat comfortably when things go wrong. Because inevitably things will go wrong, and they're heading that way pretty quickly. So I want to move into the final topic of the night. We got about 19 minutes or so left of the show, and I asked this question. I said, are you tired of all the fighting, tired of all the bickering, the back and forth, the constant government control, the constant just like people are at each other's throats because it's like my way or the highway. It's like, okay, the government's gonna do this for me, and you know the government's gonna do this for me, and it's like it's so stupid. It's so fucking stupid. It's just back and forth all the time. So I wanted to propose a few possible solutions, and I wanted to bring forward a few examples of some of those solutions that people are trying to actually do to solve these problems of government, of our money problems, of the constant bickering, of the politics and everything else. I've got 3 different topics here, 3 different places that are located around the globe that are trying 3 very different potential models. And I can see value in every single one of them. And I wanted to try to play that for you guys tonight and see what you think about it. So start off with, let's see. Let's start off with this. Let's go with Vít Jedlička. He's a gentleman that was the founder of Liberland. It's it's a small country based on liberty. Paying taxes is optional, and they have minimal government. It's nestled between Serbia and Croatia on a small chunk of land that has not been claimed by either nation since 1991. It's supposed to be an entire nation built from the ground up on blockchain technology. I think that's pretty damn cool. Cut. Okay, so I want to play this some of this video here just to kind of give you this is an interview with Vít Jedlička, or Edlica. It's a hell of a name to pronounce. At any rate, if you want to check out the rest of the video, it is down in the description below for you to check out. So I'm just going to play a small portion of this. And
we were just really fed up with the regulation and taxation, and we
Where?
saw I was globally, right? You look all around, and there is no way to escape. You cannot buy citizenship in any reasonable country for a reasonable amount of money, and we're just thinking, oh, like, you know, there is not enough opportunities on the market. We have to create a new product which will outcopy the existing states. And yes, and a lot of people actually told me to start a new country because they thought that it's a good idea what I'm saying, to cut the taxes, have a voluntary tax system, cut the regulation. Instead of 200,000 pages of regulation like you have in EU, have a very simple set of rules. And then we said, okay, we have to actually start a new country to make this happen. Mm-hmm. So now, after 3 years, we've got 500,000 people signed up for citizenship. We've got representative offices in 100 countries plus. We're doing very well, I would say, diplomatically with many countries globally on the highest level, and we are getting more and more support from Croatia political spectrum, which is the biggest obstacle for us, for example, to start to build in Liberland.
Okay, so I mean, for some people that's already it's usual thing. You know, they incorporate somewhere offshore. There's special economic zones all around the world. So the concept of a free market for governance, for some people it's already reasonable. But on the other side, many people, they would think, you know, this is completely crazy. Can you tell us what brought you into the space? You know, what were you thinking when you're like 16 years old about the world? Mm-hmm. And I think this whole movement has a very profound moral basis. Yeah. So
this guy is drowning here trying to come up with a question to ask.
To grasp the concept better.
Well, I think the biggest influence on me had Frédéric Bastiat book, The Law, which starts in a very nice paragraph which basically says there is something really bad. The law has shifted. Instead of protecting people, it is a tool of robbery, and you can see it all around Europe or globally that actually the law has been twisted, and really it has been, you know, taking money from one group and giving it to other groups systematically. The rich are stealing from the poor, and the poor are stealing from the rich through the welfare system. So it's a crazy system of redistribution which doesn't give any much more happiness and efficiency to the society, and you would be much better off if you didn't have that, actually.
So, but still many people believe that, you know, it's sort of a necessity, or I mean, there's just no way around that. So, and also, I mean, people here in Germany, you know, they're okay, they're happy, they have jobs, there's decent economic growth, or at least, you know, the system is working. So why would you be so radical? And
it's not too bad, but you don't see the invisible destruction. For example, European Commission says they, by all these regulation, 200,000 pages of regulation, they slow down the economic progress in Europe by 3.5%. That doesn't sound too bad. You're just 3.5% poorer every single year because of these regulations. But because it compiles over the years, it is the same effect like somebody dropped an atomic bomb on half of the continent. You just don't see all the buildings or all the businesses that are not created because there are all these rules and high taxes. And you know,
dude, that's an excellent point. It's this idea of the seen versus the unseen. It's this idea that, yeah, everything that you see right now might be okay, but it's all the lost opportunity that has happened in the meantime. It's all the extra stuff that maybe could have been created that never was, because of the constant regulation, because of the constant rules and laws that are constantly keeping people down. Like it's an interesting thought process, as a thought experiment rather, to go and sit there and try to think, I wonder what this could have looked like if it had been different. Anyway, hammer and sickle it out, fellas. Oh shit. Anyway, see, this is why I enjoy having Ryan in the comment section, because he's just the eternal smartass. I think he only knows that one language. I'm 100% certain he has only got that one language. So, moving on to wait. Let's go to tab 11 here and look at the actual Liberland. They've got a whole page here, and it's also linked in the description for you guys. Just give some basic information about what their form of government is. They've even got a flag and a coat of arms. They're horribly designed, so maybe they'll have to be updated. At any rate, so scroll down a little bit so I can see. Yeah, they've got, you know, their politicians, their elected president, vice president. I'm not really sure how it all works yet. They do have an entire constitution that you can click, and it's actually in the editing process right now. It is not a final draft yet, but they're taking submissions and you know, ideas for improving. But I think it's a really cool idea. It's really cool that they're trying to do something. You know, you know, it may not work. Who knows? But you know, we're never going to know unless people don't start to find out. It's interesting that it's this little tiny piece of land tucked into between Croatia and Serbia there along the banks of the Danube River. And neither country has claimed this land since the 90s. It's insane. I don't even know how they managed finding this, but they said, you know what, that's our spot. And I was looking at some other articles, and at first they were going through and having trouble even getting into the land because the border patrol agents for either country kept stopping them from going in it. Like, that made no sense. But at any rate, let's go on to number 2 here and see what that one's about. The next option, possible idea anyway, this idea called seasteading. Now, the main website's seasteading.org, and you can actually go there and look up more information about what they've got going on and how all that stuff works. But I'm going to play a small video for you so you can really see visually what their whole core concept and their whole idea is. Let's go ahead and play that one. Whenever you're ready.
The ocean calls us to confront the most basic moral imperative. Stop fighting. Today's governments hold a lockdown on so many solutions, causing citizens to fight over which single solution will be enforced on everyone. But forcing single solutions through the bottleneck of the political process is no way to find the best solution to global problems. Humans can't predict what's best for humanity. Humans discover what's best for humanity by letting millions engage in trial and error, which is exactly what governments can't do. Consider Benjamin Franklin. He helped discover and control electricity, and he helped design the United States Constitution. The control of electricity inspired a cascade of experiments which gave rise to modern technologies that to Franklin would seem magical. Each of Franklin's inventions advanced beyond his wildest imaginings, yet the methods of governance he helped invent have not advanced. The most powerful nation on earth is still using a government designed when information traveled at the speed of a horse. Why did...
Hey. Don't knock it. Those are some fast fucking horses, okay? Continue.
Franklin's ideas for technology progress, but his ideas for governance did not. 2 words: competition and choice.
Got a mic right there.
The churning force of competition and choice that drives progress from smoke signals to smartphones has never been applied to governments. When it comes to technologies and products, we can create and we can choose. When it comes to governments, we can't create or choose. Government is a monopoly. It doesn't have to compete with others to please us. Government enforces a one-size-fits-all value system on millions of citizens who can take it but can't easily leave it. Patri Friedman comes from a pedigree of thinkers who have pondered this problem for generations. His grandfather, Milton Friedman, taught about the power of choice. Millions of voluntary adjustments in a global network of commerce spontaneously adapts to human desires, while old, crusty governments are slow, gridlocked, and frustrate everybody. Patri's dad, David Friedman, taught about the power of mobility. He famously suggested that if houses were on wheels and borders didn't exist, citizens who were dissatisfied with their government services could freely drive their house to a competing government. We'd have an economic solution to political problems. His son, Patri Friedman, realized choice and mobility were married in fluidity. Because our homes are stuck to land, governments can claim control over captive citizens. But what if we lived on the ocean and could sail about and choose the neighbors we want? On a fluid frontier, governments could only form if people chose to attach to each other. Ocean governments would dissolve if people removed their consent, and expand if people chose them. On a fluid medium, citizens wouldn't struggle to survive governments' choices. Governments would struggle to survive citizens' choices. On the ocean, the parameters of progress would be in place. We'd have variation by governments and selection by citizens. Variation and selection. The same magic recipe that drives rapid progress in technologies, markets, and science. From this primal soup of societies, we'd experience what Patri Friedman called a Cambrian explosion of governance. Patri suggested that the process of trial and error will generate solutions.
So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it there. We'll stop it there. Anyway, I thought that was when I heard that, I actually heard the concept on a podcast, and I thought that was so freaking cool. Like just this concept of being able to like hop on your little chunk of land and just float off to wherever you want to go to. It'd be freaking amazing. I would like just to see this kind of thing take place and start to actually have some kind of results. The guy that was talking about it was going over explaining all the details of the struggles they have to fight with, the things that they have to deal with, and it's like this is really neat that people are coming up with these ideas. They're actually trying to solve the problems instead of just complaining about it and lobbying for their government to change it for them. Like that's not ever a solution. It's never going to be a solution. So let's move on to the last one of the night, and you guys tell me which one you like the best. And just waiting on somebody to bring up the last one here. So we've got we've got another one down in Chiran. It's in Mexico. It's a small town in Mexico. I ain't got the foggiest idea how to pronounce it, but it's spelled Cheran. And it's an anarchist town that's it's followed by anarchic principles, and it has over 30,000 anarchists living there. Okay, about a decade ago, this town took and kicked out all their politicians, all the police and government officials, and basically all the crime stopped. They use a self-patrolled community, and it's very interested to see how this community stands out against the backdrop of all the crime and corruption that's all around them. So I'm gonna play a little bit of this one here, kind of give you a little gist of it.
Is governed by its residents with strict rules and guidelines based on their indigenous Purepecha roots.
We came up with several drafts of different governance structures. Turn it down just a little bit. But we also used... Turn it down just a little bit. The volume over there. Yeah, because it's in Spanish, so I want to read it in English for the podcast audience. So anyway, but we also used the knowledge we had from our ancestors. So that is how we started to organize ourselves and went back to this old form of government again.
Each block in Charan discusses their issues at a community bonfire. Then they elect Queris, or representatives like Enerino Santa Clara, to bring these issues to the General Assembly.
From our bonfires to our neighborhoods to the community police, we all provide each other with a sense of security. There is where we see the greatest and most successful progress.
The community has also been slowly restoring the forest and nursing tree seedlings in a community garden.
I think it's good for our people and also future generations to learn about this way of life and continue our native practices. I would like for all of us to feel a deep love for nature.
Charan has become an example for other communities across Mexico. In 2018, 32 towns boycotted the presidential elections. Others are now looking to replicate its success against crime and corruption.
There's a phrase that people outside our community like to use. They talk about Charaning Mexico, or just making the rest of Michoacan like Charan. So what can we interpret from this? That every community can do what we are doing here in Charan. They can stop the political parties from stealing their resources. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. No, I'm so fascinated. I can't get enough of these types of solutions that are out there, that people are actually going in and trying to solve problems in a real way, and they're actually having some great success. So Logical Thought says, great idea, but the other governments on Saw land would make it unbearable trying to get materials and ways to get products. Seems far-fetched, but may work if enough do it. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. And basically, what I think that these communities, the bigger they are, what they would bring to the local surroundings, depending on which country they decide to, dock their little city by, they're going to bring a lot of a better boost to the economy, as far as more shopping, more, people are going to still buy products. They're going to want to, create products, and there's going to be an economic value to having them there. So I mean, it's a possibility. I get where you're coming from. There are going to be possible issues down the road. But Ryan says if it was in the movie Waterworld, it would work. That's totally true. I haven't seen Waterworld, so I'm just going to agree with you no matter what you said. So Logical Thought says I think it fits better as a movie than a lifestyle. Yeah, I don't know. So just I'm just curious what you guys thought about those particular possible solutions. They may, like I said, they may not be perfect. They may not even work, but at least people are doing something, and that's pretty fucking inspiring to see people do that. I love to see people take matters into their own hands and take responsibility for their own lives and actually try to solve problems. Like, instead of just listening to the talk radio and bitching because of all the problems that they're hearing about and hoping that the government solves it for them and going to vote in a rigged election and hoping that your vote, enough of your votes count. It's like, it's such a diluted, terrible, terrible system. At any rate, so I'm going to wrap up by saying, if you enjoyed what you watched tonight, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, head on over to unframeofmind.com, and I'd love to have you on, and we can talk about some of these cool ideas or whatever it is you want to talk about. So, also, if you would like to support the show, I actually do have a way you can do that right now. If you head to unframeofmind.com/support, there's a number of ways you can do that, and I will be adding more as time progresses. We've got anyway, got places, ways you can donate, $5 a month to help out, or you can just tip us in cryptocurrency or whatever form or function you decide to use. That would be greatly appreciated. It helps to pay for all the costs of doing this, like the website cost, hosting, and all that crap. But at any rate, it seems like it's freezing, so I hope it's okay. But anyway, so we'll hop off here. If yeah, it says it's fine, but it looks like it's loaded anyway. All right, y'all. You guys have been watching On Frame of Mind. My name's Daniel Wagner.